It's DSP's Top 5 Worst Gaming Trends of 2011. Number 4. The gaming industry promises to deliver quality games that use motion controls, but fall flat on their face. So, if you've been a fan of mine for the past 2 years, you probably know my feelings about motion controls. And the fact that the majority of the press conferences held at E3 2010 were purely focused around the release of the Microsoft Kinect, the Sony Move, the Nintendo Wii, and all of their crazy motion control gimmicks, I was very frustrated. When these were finally released in the fourth quarter of 2010, I also wasn't impressed. I mean, very few games supported these controls. The games that really were the best seemed to be party-style dance games, and there really were no motion control games for the hardcore gamer. In addition to that, a lot of the games that came out for these things just simply didn't even work properly. And so, when 2011 came along, and the gamers finally saw that really not many titles even supported these motion controls anymore, I think a lot of people said, alright, finally, now Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo can kind of get back to focusing on what they do best at their core, making good games. Well, here comes E3 2011, and guess what the major focus of the press conferences were? Motion controls. Microsoft now touting that they would have a whole new line of motion control games that would be for the core gamer, namely Gunstringer and a survival horror game called Rise of Nightmares. Well, Sony, on the other side, said we're not going to release games that are specifically just for the PS Move, but what we're going to focus on is integrating the PS Move into our more mainstream titles like Killzone 3, like SOCOM 4. Well, I have played these games, and I am here to report that, number one, none of the games who optionally use motion controls actually use them to any kind of advantage. SOCOM 4, Killzone 3 are actually harder to play with motion controls than they are to just use a standard controller. As for the Microsoft Kinect games for the hardcore gamer, well, I did a lot of co-op gameplay with myself and John Rambo swapping back and forth this year, and unlike what most people do, I actually did picture-in-picture footage of these Kinect games. And I am here to report that these games are not very good. I think the highest rating we even gave one of them was something like a 6.5. And when you have other superior games flooding the market, especially in the fourth quarter of the year, and then you're releasing these lackluster Kinect titles, you're just like, what were they thinking? Out of all the games that utilize motion controls, there has been one and one only that seems to have possibly benefit from it, and that game is Zelda Skyward Sword. Now keep in mind that Skyward Sword actually required you to use the Wiimote and Nunchuck. There was no alternate control scheme to simply use a gamepad, and even being that this game is pretty good, it's not saying much because there are blatant times in the game when the motion controls fail, notably trying to roll a bomb. This was the thing that Miyamoto could not do at the E3 2010 press conference, and playing the game myself, I can tell you it's hard to get it to do what you want it to do. So, the bottom line with motion controls, it's a gimmick. It's not anything that anyone should be spending money, dropping money. I feel so bad for people who went and bought the PS Move and the PS Sharpshooter because of those stupid Kevin Butler commercials, and then actually went to play SOCOM or Killzone 3 and realized how hard it was to play the fucking games with those controllers. It's a complete waste of time. It's a dumb gimmick. It needs to die, and these game studios need to go back to focusing on good games rather than gimmicks to push more hardware and try to make more money. Well, what's a given when it comes to bad gaming trends? How about shitty fucking games? When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the worst games of 2011.